Oh, alright, SlimmBob here. Time for another review. This time a film. Oh, I realised I've waited for this film for like a year. In fact, I didn't know about it until like a few months ago. But yeah, I finally got to see it, and I actually skipped half an hour of uni time to see this film, so you should be honoured. But yeah, anyway, yeah, the film I'm talking about is Paranormal Activity 3. Whew. Now, if you know me, I love Paranormal Activity. I think the first one especially, I think it redefines, it's a standard for the found footage film. It really is. It's just the way it doesn't rely on jump scares, it relies on suspense and character development and stuff. And the end, how it shocks you, it makes you jump, but it's rare and it works. And Paranormal Activity 2, it was good. Look, I kind of liked it when it came out, but looking back, I think it's because the ending wasn't that strong, but it was alright. I think Paranormal Activity is one of them films, it shouldn't have sequels, it should be an anthology series. I think you should have a different story every time you see the film. You know what I mean? Every new film should have a different story. The whole appeal of Paranormal Activity is the fact that you do not know what is actually doing it. They all, like in the first one, they're always coming up with suggestions of what it could be, but it's never defined. And it creates this backstory, but it's never really important, and the story's concluded at the end. To me, the first one was conclusive. It never needed a sequel. The second one expanded on that story. It did it alright. It did it well, in fact, because I did care about what was happening, and you know, it left questions. And this one, Paranormal Activity 3, I liked it. In fact, I would say I liked it more than the second one. The second one had good scares, but the ending was really weak. This one is it's kind of weird. There's a lot of things I'm going to moan about, but don't get me wrong, it's still a good film. Alright, I'm going to get the moans out of the way. First moan, it's set in 1988. It's a prequel to the other films, where basically the two sisters, Katie and whatever she's called, I forgot her name, sorry. The two sisters basically, as children, and the ghost haunting them. Well, I think it's a ghost, it's never really specified, but that thing haunting them as kids. The first problem I have with this, it's set in 1988. These films were they were supposed to be filmed on VHS tapes, right? It's in HD quality. The sound quality is very good. I know that's moaning, but it would have been amazing if they'd have shot this on VHS and made it more authentic like that. It would have been a risk. I think the only thing with that, it would have alienated like a casual audience, like a mainstream audience. I think they wouldn't have got that, but it would have made it a better film, I think, if it was shot on VHS and it had that grain to it, because it does paint this illusion. Like, you start off and you know, like how VHS tapes, they had like dates on them and things, like you could see the date and time. It does that kind of thing, but you never think that it's on a VHS, and that took me out of film. It really did. And I wouldn't have guessed this was saying 80s. You know, if you said to me, this is an 80s film, I would have never guessed that, because the characters don't dress like they're in the 80s. Their houses aren't set in 80s. It isn't, nothing about it screams 80s. And that's another reason this film should have been part of an anthology series, because if you could go into this film not knowing anything about Paranormal Activity, and you will get as much gratification from it as you would from if you already know the story. At least I think you would. I honestly, it doesn't reveal a whole about the later films either. It's just, it works as its own film, and I think that's why I forgive it for a lot of these things. Like the fact that the main guy, alright, the dad in it, he's the one who's basically filming everything, right? He does this thing where he even when he's watching the footage, he films himself watching the footage. Why? Why the fuck does he do that? We're talking about VHS tapes that were expensive them days, and these cameras, 2 hours battery life probably. Well, my experience, 2 hours battery life. And he manages to film himself for all this time. I do not buy that. I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that happens. I'm sorry if I'm moaning, it's a good film. Yeah, and the other thing I didn't like, the audio, right? They do this thing. Remembering first Paranormal Activity, the main appeal was how realistic you were. You know, like with the audio especially. The only real sound effects you could notice, to me, was the rumble. You know, like at night when things were happening, the ghosts came over, right? And you heard a rumble. That's when you knew shit was happening, right? In this film, you don't get that. You get some ridiculous sound effects. Like even, there's a bit where, a false scare, where one of the characters makes another character jump, right? That's all I'm going to say. It does that typical fucking cliche thing where it just goes really loud. So in the end, it's not the action that scares you. You're not even scared. It's just the noise. I hate it when films do that. That's why I hated the new Nightmare on Elm Street. The idea of that film was great, but they relied on that way too much. The really loud, you know, they did that way too much. And I hate that. I jump really bad. But I'm not scared, I'm just annoyed. So I have to cover my ears, and it really winds me up. That's why I like stuff like Alien and things like that. The Shining, that use suspense. That's why the first Paranormal Activity was so successful, because it used suspense. Classic fucking suspense. And this film doesn't. It relies on jump scares. It's a very modern film. Even the way it's directed, like, in the original, even the original too, right, you could tell the way they move the camera, it felt very spontaneous, the way they move the camera. In this, it feels like it's directed. Like, there's a bit, they go to grandmother's house, right, he's using the camera in the fucking car. Why? Why is he doing that? And the way he uses the camera just to get everyone's face, just to look at the house, you can tell what's happening. It looks like a director's done that. It looks like somebody's told him to do that, and it took me out of the experience. It really did. Anyway, yeah, it's not a bad film at all. I am moaning, but it's not a bad film. They're the things that separate from the other Paranormal Activities. Alright, let's talk about what's good. For one, the story. I expected it to be a pointless film, because prequels usually, I don't really like prequels, because, like, bloody Underworld, right? It were alright, the Lycan one, but it didn't add anything to the Underworld story. All I wanted to know was what was going to happen later, how Celine and Michael were going to take on this war and things, but we got to learn about Lycans and how they got their uprising, and I didn't give a shit. A lot of prequels are like that. This film took it really well, because it does expand on, to me, the idea. Every Paranormal Activity so far has revealed slightly more about this ghost, and this one does take it, especially the end is really good. I think that's why I really like it. The end is fantastic, but yeah, the way it ends, you do learn more about this ghost. Not specifically the ghost, but I don't want to spoil it, but it's a good ending. It raises that intrigue. That's the beauty of these films. They raise intrigue. You want to know what it is, and it does succeed in that. And alright, if you like the other Paranormal Activities, this isn't like them. This is more of a traditional, it's a fucking slasher film. Or is it? I don't know. I don't know. You see, the way it's written, it's kind of... The characters, for instance, they act really well. The only problem I have is the mum. She like there's a bit the bloke. There's stuff happening on camera. I mean, the stuff that happens in this film is a lot more extreme than in the first two films. You know, like in the first film where you got like right at the end. It would pretty much near the end where the house started getting messed up and things. Well, in this, it happens pretty early on, and the mum refuses to watch the tapes. The husband is like, you gotta watch these tapes, come on, I have proven it, and she refuses to watch the tapes. Why? That was the only thing that jarred with me, but other than that, I love how the characters act like people. Like, if you were in that situation, what the fuck would you do? You would get out of there, wouldn't you? Well, you know what I mean? Stuff like that happens. People do think logically. They do move out of the house. Characters do get out of there and things. And you see how that affects them. That's one of my main praises of Insidious. Like, that was the same, like, how the characters acted like people. That's how horror films should be. They should. A lot of horror films these days, they're getting to a point where the characters just act like idiots, and it's just an excuse for us to show us gore or to give us a cheap scare. Whereas to me, the best horror films are the ones where you have normal people in these extraordinary situations and who are exposed to these dangers, and that's the kind of people you can relate to. The Paranormal Activity films, and this one as well, gives you that. And you gotta look at this. If you go into this film, I think you gotta look to it as just as a standalone title, not as a found footage film, because the way it's edited and stuff, it looks way too professional. It feels edited. The other two films, to me, they felt raw. They felt like found footage, but like someone had found them and edited some parts together. Whereas this film, it feels like a film. You know you're watching a film, at least I did. But just as entertainment, I think still, even though it's different, I enjoyed it more than the second one. I think I give that 4 stars, the second one. I don't think it's as good. I actually enjoyed this more, but I would... I don't know. You see, I'll give it 3 stars because I was really... And the things that annoyed me really did annoy me, like, all the way through. Like, the fact that... Alright, you know in the first one? Like, wait, sorry. Stuff would happen. At the end, it still was your imagination that created this creature and created these events. You were part of that film, if you know what I mean. The way your mind melded with it and created the ideas, right? In this film, there's so much extreme shit happening all the way through that it gets to a point where the guy, he films everything. He's walking through the house and he has so much proof that this ghost exists, right? Definitive proof. I mean, within half an hour you know the ghost is real. Even like fucking 20 minutes you know the ghost is real. He continues to film everything, even when there's so much shit happening that's threatening his life, his family's lives. He is still filming. That is the point where me as a human being, I would drop the camera and be like, fuck this, we're getting out of here, let's fuck off. But he don't, and he keeps filming, and that kind of pissed me off. Like, bits like that. Though if you like that kind of horror film where characters act kind of silly and you like to see them in these dumb situations, I'm not saying you're dumb, I kind of like that as well. Like, Final Destination has that, and Nightmare on Elm Street has that kind of appeal. But I didn't expect it from this film. I think that's the thing. If you are expecting that kind of slasher feel, mixed with essences of the old Paranormal Activities, you will enjoy this film. And compared to a lot of horror films these days, it's still much better. It's still really good. In terms of found footage films, it's still one of the best. It still stands up in this franchise, even though it's different, takes a different kind of take on it, more jump scare based rather than suspense. It does what it does really well. So for that, yeah, I'm giving it 3 stars because it's not quite I prefer the suspense kind of horror, but I can understand what they were doing, and I really enjoyed it for what it were. So yeah, 3 stars, and I enjoyed it more than the second one. I think just because of the ending, it created a lot of intrigue, and I can't wait for another one just to see what happens next. So yeah, 3 stars. Go and see this film if it's still in fucking pictures. But yeah. Anyway, yeah. This is SlimmBob. Thanks for watching. Now drop me at. And goodbye.